Well, thank you, Toby, and good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here today. Like Toby said, my name is Jason Grachowski. A little PSA on me. I have over 15 years of experience in B2B and B2C marketing, and I work for RBA. We're a digital and technology consultancy, and we're helping our clients transform the way they approach their customers and their business. And so, why is digital transformation important? Well, as we've moved from an agricultural to an industrial and now a digital economy, the speed of business has increased exponentially, and so has the competition for consumers. And so companies of all sizes, big and small, are realizing the need to transform themselves to not only survive, but to also thrive in the digital economy. But it's not easy, and there are a lot of pitfalls. So my goal today is to help you to recognize and also avoid those pitfalls. And why is that important for you? Well, whether you're a leader who's taking on a digital initiative in your organization, or whether you're a marketer that's working on a team that's performing a digital initiative and you want to add value, or whether you're an agency partner and you're working with a client that's undergoing and transforming digitally, you'll be able to have some context as to what state they're in. So the 7 deadly sins, how does this fit in? Well, that's the construct that we're going to use today to talk about digital transformation. What I'm going to do is we're going to dive into each of these 7 deadly sins, and I'm talking about the traditional, historical 7 deadly sins, not just some made-up 7 deadly sins or mistakes. But we'll dive into each one, and I want to show examples of how those sins have led to mistakes that companies have made that are either attempting a digital initiative or they're ignoring the need to do so in today's marketplace. So let's get started with a definition of digital transformation. It's a pretty broad term, so what do we actually mean by it? Well, first and foremost, it's investing in technology platforms. And these platforms are ones that will help your organization be more intelligent and help you work smarter rather than harder. And so we're talking about IT systems, employee portals, and on the marketing side, systems like CRM, content management, and of course, marketing automation. But transformation is about more than just technology. It's also about transforming your business model or organization. And here we see companies that are still making their first forays into e-commerce. We see companies that are improving their processes around information sharing and connecting with their employees. And then we see companies all the way on the other end of the spectrum that are employing all digital business models, companies like Uber and Airbnb. And then the bullseye is, of course, the customer. Understanding the customer life cycle, approaching the digital consumer touchpoints accordingly, with the ultimate goal of improving customer experience. Okay. What about the 7 deadly sins? So you likely have all heard of them, but you probably have forgotten them by now. A little bit of history. They date all the way back to the 4th century AD. They were introduced by a monk named Evagrius Ponticus. And since then, we've seen them throughout literature, art, and history, throughout the entire of modern history. We see them in works like Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, Dante's Purgatory, and my favorite, the 1995 film Seven with Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. And here are the 7 deadly sins: sloth, lust, pride, envy, greed, gluttony, and wrath. Okay, we're going to go through these in a little different order, but I think you'll get it. So lust. Anybody know who this is? Who these people are? Anybody? Thank you, Kardashians. So lust is traditionally defined as the uncontrolled desire for money, food, fame, like the Kardashians, or power. And the way this translates into the digital context would be taking on a digital initiative to be a trailblazer for a show of power or advancing one's career rather than for substantive reasons. So let's look at an example of lust. This is Download. This is an annual concert in the UK, a hard rock concert if you can't tell. And they wanted to be the first major UK festival to go completely cashless. So patrons had already purchased tickets, and Download came to them and said, you know what, we're going to go all digital this year. We need you to get a digital wristband, load it with cash, and then when you come to the concert, that's how you'll use that to pay for things. The problem was, they told people this about 5 weeks before, and they wanted to do this to make a major PR splash. They thought they were being tricky here. So the patrons got the wristbands. That wasn't the problem. They showed up to the concert. But that should have been a major red flag. Guess what happened? The system crashed, and no one could buy food or drink at the concert, or merchandise, right? So obviously this is an example of a poor customer experience. They got a little too far ahead of themselves. Also, it resulted in a loss of revenue for the concert venue, so I don't think they were too happy either. So how do you avoid this type of mistake? Be planful and deliberate in constructing your strategy. And that's whether it's a full-blown digital transformation or a specific digital project. And answer why and how. Why are we doing this in the first place? More importantly, how is this going to affect our customers? And how is this going to work logistically and technically? Okay, gluttony, number 2. Gluttony is overindulgence of anything to the point of waste. And gluttony can be seen in overinvesting in one specific area of digital transformation, forgetting about the others. So, you're probably all familiar with Research in Motion. They're the guys that made BlackBerry phones. You know, the phones that had the QWERTY keyboards on the front and required 2 thumbs to use and email and text. Well, back in the 2000s, RIM was essentially printing money. They were at the apex of their game. And they invested and overinvested again in their secure network and QWERTY handsets for business users. They thought that's what would keep them going. What they didn't realize and what they didn't pay attention to were changing consumer interest in phones that were more simple and had more design, more aesthetically pleasing, like the iPhone in 2007. And so BlackBerry's answer to the iPhone in 2008 was the BlackBerry Storm, another, guess what, QWERTY handset. And that product flopped, as did subsequent products, and their market share came down accordingly. In Q1 2009, BlackBerry had a 20% global smartphone market share. In Q3 2015, that market share is down to 0.3%. So what could BlackBerry have done differently? They could have invested in methods and tools that would allow them to keep a constant pulse on consumer attitudes and behaviors. That way, they would have noticed that the sands were shifting right under their feet. And they could have invested in all 3 areas: people, process, and technology. Remember, they just invested in technology. And that way, they would have been to create a lasting change that would have propelled them forward instead of standing still. How about greed? Greed is defined as the inordinate desire to acquire or possess more than one needs. So this can be seen in chasing the hot new thing before assessing if it fits your goals and objectives. And this hot new thing could be a number of things. It could be a method, a tactic, a tool, a channel. And we're going to see an example of this next. But before we go, it can also be a slightly different variation. A little bit of the opposite, but it can be over-investing in multiple digital platforms and not utilizing the full capabilities of your current marketing or technology stack. But let's get back to the hot new thing. So who here is familiar with a company called Quirky? How many? Okay, a couple, great. So in 2009, Quirky burst onto the consumer product scene with a very unique and progressive business model. See, the hot new thing during this time was crowdsourcing. And what Quirky did was they went out to inventors and they took ideas from those inventors in collaboration and they brought them in and they had a community panel waiting of several 100,000 members within Quirky. Members like us. And so they took those invention ideas and they crowdsourced them into that channel. And those panelists would then decide which products would eventually get produced. So, pretty cool idea. At first it worked. Quirky had success with some products like the Pivot Power, which you see in the upper right-hand corner. And that's a flexible power strip that you could mold into different shapes and use it at home or at the office. But as more and more of these ideas came into the funnel, and they weren't necessarily good ideas, Quirky ended up producing products like the Smart Egg Tray that you see right under, whose sole purpose was to be able to allow you to monitor how many eggs that you had in your refrigerator from a smartphone app. What is the purpose of that? So more and more of these types of ideas came in, and Quirky spent millions of dollars producing these products, many of which never even made it through their retail distribution partners. So what happened? They burned through $185 million in venture capital. Quirky, as of 2015, has stopped distribution and manufacturing, as well as course distribution of their products. So what's the moral here? Well, trialing new methods, new things. No. It's not you, it's me. Trialing new methods and tools to either improve your business or better connect with your consumers, it's smart, it's proactive. But make sure it fits into your strategy and make sure it's replicable so you can use it over the long haul. Also, back to our previous example, the second one, understand and utilize your current marketing stack. Understand what's in your toolbox before you go out and buy new tools. How about sloth? Sloth is defined as physical laziness. And sloth can be seen in executive leadership not having the vision and the commitment to dedicate to digital transformation. Sloth can also be seen in people and organizational culture also acting as a barrier to change. We've all seen it. So for an example of sloth, unfortunately, we don't have to look any farther than right here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, a company called Radio Shack, over a 90-year-old brand. And Radio Shack had 4 CEOs in 11 years between 2005 and 2015. When you have that much turnover in leadership, it's almost impossible to transform your company and to stay competitive. So each of these CEOs came in, and they had a board to please. And so they did what they knew best. They focused on quarterly cost controls and preserving margins, try to prop up the stock price. Unfortunately, what they didn't give attention to was more progressive areas like e-commerce and the customer experience. Keep in mind also, in the same time, you had Amazon coming onto the scene that was essentially taking over the consumer electronics industry by serving customers online. So as Radio Shack gave their customers less and fewer reasons to actually come into their stores or shop online, they had a successive run of losing quarters, and they depleted their $500 million in cash reserves and filed for bankruptcy in 2015. So how can leaders avoid a similar fate? Leadership has to constantly challenge the status quo in charting the strategic direction of the company. And it's also incumbent on leadership to instill a sense of urgency within the leadership team and to set incentives across the entire organization to accomplish their digital mission. How about wrath? This funny guy. Wrath is the inordinate feelings of hatred or anger. And we can see this in the acrimonious relationships and power struggles that exist between marketing and information technology. Unfortunately, this is still the case. So we're going to change gears here a little. Instead of a company example, we're going to use a Twitter exchange. So I know you probably can't see this. That's all right. I've got bubbles. So this gentleman, Vala Afshar, he's one of the hosts of a video show on cxotalk.com. So in this particular week, he's just introducing his guest. Pretty easy, right? Vala actually is the chief digital evangelist at Salesforce. So he's not a marketer, but he's kind of representing the marketing side of this. So he says, our guest this week is Chief Marketing Technologist Scott Brinker. He's introducing him to the show. So Esteban Kolsky, who is presumably someone tied to IT, he just jumps into this conversation. And he says, hey, Vala, tell Scott Brinker to become besties with the CIO very rapidly. The CMO reign over tech is going bye-bye quickly. So they trade some barbs back and forth. And then finally, Vala comes back and he says, hey, you know what? By 2020, it'll be the CDMO, the Chief Digital and Marketing Officer. Esteban comes back over the top. He says, technology is going back to being the purview of the CIO. Playtime is over. Obviously, this is a fail. These guys don't work in the same organization, but these are not the type of relationships and disputes that companies that are trying to transform themselves need within the walls of the company. And I love this response by Adriana Karaboutis. She's the former CIO of Dell and currently the EVP of technology at Biogen. She comes in and says at the end of the conversation, hey guys, IT is ubiquitous. CIO, CMOs partner for innovation and value creation. The alternative, competition wins. And that's the mic drop. So she ended that conversation, thankfully. And what can leadership do about these types of relationships? Well, they need to take a proactive approach in fostering a symbiotic relationship between marketing and IT within the organization. But it's also incumbent on the players themselves to get along, work together collaboratively, and leave politics for the politicians. Envy. I love this picture. So kids are really good at this. Unfortunately, sometimes adults are too. Envy is the desire and coveting of what someone else has. And this can be seen in desiring an observed outcome without understanding what actually produces it. So Monkey Mail. Does anybody remember Monkey Mail? 2006? Show of hands. Monkey Mail. All right, it's also like Elf Yourself. Everybody know what that is? Same kind of thing, right? So Monkey Mail was a viral hit in 2006. In 2007, it actually won a Webby Award in the viral marketing category. Well, in my past, I worked for a large retailer. I worked very closely with the chief merchandising officer and his team. And so one day, in a room full of about 50 people, cross-functional groups throughout the company, the business was down and traffic was really hurting as a result into the brick and mortar stores. So he turned to me and said, hey, Jason, why don't you and the marketing guys, you go cook up something viral like Monkey Mail? So you laugh, but this is probably, with a room full of marketers, this has probably happened to pretty much everybody in this room that's been asked at one point in time in their organization to come up with something viral. So we all know that something like Monkey Mail or Elf Yourself or the Ice Bucket Challenge, these come along once in a decade, right? They're really lightning in a bottle. And besides, viral tactics tend to be more engagement-oriented and create affinity for the brand. And so how do you know that a tactic like that is even going to have direct and immediate impact on store traffic? You don't. So what can we do as marketers when we're faced with this kind of situation? Well, you have to constantly provide context and insights about your customers to both senior leadership and your cross-functional peers throughout the organization. That way, when unique requests come up like this, you can suggest alternatives that are actually attractive to your customers because you know your customers, and that ones that have an actual realistic chance of success. All right, Pride. Who's this? Anybody? Kanye loves Kanye, right? Oh, where'd Kanye go? You know it. Who said that? Okay. Well, nope, maybe not. So pride, while we're waiting, is the believing that one is better than others or obsessive admiration of the personal self. And this can be seen in companies that believe that they don't need to transform to stay competitive. And again. And we also hear people say things like, we've always done it this way. That is a major red flag. Okay, so Blockbuster and Netflix. This is a great story about pride. So back in 2000, Blockbuster had the opportunity to purchase Netflix for a mere $50 million. But Blockbuster at this point wasn't really interested in digitizing their business. They didn't want to kill the golden goose. They were getting fat off of profits by driving people into the stores to rent DVDs and VHS. So we know what happened, right? Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy in 2010. Netflix is now worth $45 billion. And Netflix is a really interesting story as well, because they didn't have too much pride in their own model. Remember, Netflix started off as a DVD by mail rental business, and when they saw the sand shifting towards digital transformation, what did they do? They built up their digital library, and then they actually started producing content themselves because they saw where that was headed. So ultimately, Netflix is in a great place. And the moral of this story, disrupt yourself or your competition will do it for you. Okay, so what have we learned today? Practice customer centricity. Improving the customer experience or enabling your organization to do so should be the ultimate goal of any digital initiative. It's that simple. Leadership, vision, and conviction. Digital transformation is strategic. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So you need leadership that has the endurance to see it through and to affect lasting change. You need to construct and follow a game plan. Plan the work and work the plan. But you also have to be flexible. That way, when market changes or consumer sentiment changes, you have the flexibility to tweak your strategy, tweak your plan, and pivot. Invest responsibly in people, process, and technology. You need to invest in all three areas, people, process, and technology, to create a lasting digital transformation. But be responsible at the same time. Understand what's in your toolbox and make sure that you're not buying redundant tools because you don't know the capabilities of your current marketing or your technology stack. And foster and incent collaboration and a culture of change. So this one's on leadership. They really need to appoint project sponsors that can work collaboratively to accomplish the digital transformation or initiative. And they need to align incentives to the transformative goal, as well as evangelize the importance of these initiatives throughout the entire company. And then finally, challenge and disrupt. Be ready to transform, and then be ready to transform again, and probably again. There are no companies that are safe in the era of the digitally connected consumer. And there are thousands of companies that are out there that are willing to serve your customers if you won't. So thank you. Appreciate your time. Looks like we've got about 5 minutes. So I'd be happy to take any questions and follow us on Twitter. Anyone? Questions? Yeah, back there.
What are some examples of companies that are doing transformation right?
Oh, great question. So I'll give you two examples, B2C and B2B. So B2C, when you look at a company like Burberry, who's led or was led by Angela Ahrendts, the CEO, and she came in and took a very staid and old, kind of tired, traditional British brand, and she helped digitize that company. Burberry, under her watch, made their first forays into e-commerce. Burberry recently did a partnership with Apple, and they have an Apple Music channel. So she's really been able to move the needle there. And as you know, she's now one of the senior vice presidents at Apple, reporting directly to Tim Cook. and helping out with the retail stores and taking that further. On the B2B side, I think General Electric is a company that's doing fantastic work. General Electric, if you go to their website, if you haven't been on it, just go around and play on the website. It is absolutely amazing. You know, the photography is incredible. The stories are great. They're incorporating video. They're doing everything right from a content perspective. And when you look at what they've done in channels like Snapchat and Instagram and using Vine to their advantage, they are way ahead of the curve. If you go on their website, they'll actually call themselves a digital industrial company. And this isn't by accident. I mean, they've been doing this for years and setting the groundwork and laying the plans to be able to capitalize on where the industry's gone. So I think those two are examples of companies that are, you know, that are really stepping up their game. And I mean, those are big companies, right? They have huge budgets, and so they can afford, you know, the resources to hire the people and to be where they need to be. But that doesn't mean that other, you know, medium-sized and small-sized B2B companies, B2C companies can't do a similar thing in terms of, you know, making their business more interesting from a content or a digital perspective. Anyone else? Yeah, please.
In your example about Radio Shack, so they recently announced that they're bringing in Nick Cannon as their new, I think, creative director.
Mm-hmm.
And do you see that as a move towards transformation, or are you more in my camp where it's just sort of almost a marketing ploy trying to grasp at straws to transform their business too little too late?
That's a really good one as well, and I did see that article the other day. Unfortunately, I think it's the latter. As you kind of see when hedge funds get involved and they try to prop up companies and then those companies fail, they need to get the most out of their money, and they need to try to find another suitor to sell that brand to. And so it seems on the surface like that is a trick for them to be able to sell that brand to someone else. For Nick Cannon, it's great. He's probably going to make millions of dollars off of, you know, putting his name on consumer electronics. So I'm sure for him it'll work out wonderfully. Great question, though. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, right here. Yeah, that's a tough one. Microsoft, wow, they've got a lot of smarter people over there than me. You know, I think. The question was, what do you think of Microsoft? Somebody who's kind of at the forefront of digital computing and software, and is now kind of, you know, at least from a consumer brand perspective, kind of falling behind. You know, it's a great question. I don't think it's too late for Microsoft. I kind of think of digital as an analogy like a train, right? If you're standing still and you're on the tracks and this train is coming, and it is coming, you're going to get run over. If you're waiting at this station and the train pulls in, you're going to get on and you're going to go for a ride and it's going to be fine. And if the train's pulling away, you can run to catch up, and you got to just work a little harder. And I think that's kind of the situation that Microsoft is in. They've done a great job on the B2B side. I mean, their leadership. But on the B2C side, they've had multiple failures, and they just really still haven't, you know, connected on the B2C side with, you know, with consumers. On the B2B side, though, they're absolutely amazing. What they're doing for sharing information across the organization and you know, employee portals, workplace productivity, they're really way ahead of the game. And now they're catching up too with their CRM solutions and Microsoft Dynamics marketing. So they're not avoiding it. They're stepping in, and you know, I think they're going to be a major player as we continue kind of down this path. But they're not your traditional B2C brand. Great question. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Great. Well, I thank you for your time. Would love your feedback. If you see me out there, please stop me, say hi. Or if you want to talk more about transformation, drop by the RBA booth.